I ran up a check, I might do it again. Enemies close, had me thinking they're friends. 10 toes down, I'll be free until the end. Crib outside the city, I don't feel safe in my hands. Took so many years, I'm just waiting for the wins. I'm in debt to no one but the one who took my sins. I do it for real, there's no reason to pretend. If I do it once, I do it again. Add it up, bankroll, euro, peso, add it up. I'm just doing me, everything is on me. Oh, you matter what? Add it up, bankroll, euro, peso, add it up. I'm just doing me, everything is on me. Oh, you matter what? Add it up. Told her if it's all me, everything is on me. Gon' back it up. Matter what? Told you I'ma do me. Why you hating on me? It's not adding up. I do roll like a Mack truck. Country heart, I might cop a farm and go act up. Lot of scars, I was cold-hearted, now I'm back up. Keep it real, I do this once a month, I don't rap much. I just take the money and go stack up. Only buying car till you get tatted up. All that other bull, it don't matter much. You only climb me, I put the ladders up. I ran up.
Welcome everybody. YouTube, what's going on? It's Anthony, Mike, almost mediocre sports guys. What's going on, Mike?
Not too much, sir. How you doing?
Doing great. Other than my body hurting because of softball, I am doing great though.
Hopefully the aches and pains aren't. The bigger thing is hopefully you didn't sprain anything. That's always the bigger.
I've come to the point in realizing when I play this game, I don't need to go completely all out anymore. So I pay to play. I'm not getting paid, so. Exactly.
Yeah, what was it that Aaron said the other night? What was he was talking about with celebrating touchdowns or something like that?
Oh yeah. I mean, we're gonna get into that for sure because we got some definitely some exciting stuff to talk about. Obviously, picks in this week that we will be going over. So we're gonna get right into this show, guys, because we got a lot to go over this week. A lot of stuff from last week. So basically, first thing I kind of just want to touch that happened yesterday was the Shohei Ohtani, Mike, 50-50 club, first member of it, right? 50 home runs, 50 stolen bases, on a night of also hitting 6 for 6, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody that's a baseball fan is pretty familiar with this gentleman. In a season where he can't even pitch because, he's still recovering from an injury.
Yeah.
But that's pretty impressive, because I actually had concerns because I just felt that the motion of swinging, that I just didn't see where you could potentially do that if you've got a shoulder problem. But I tell you what, 50-50 is insanely, it's hard to even fathom, really. I know they're still talking. I think it's been brought up, would he pitch in the playoffs? They're saying no, which, I guess you can't really afford to do that. But I'll be interested to see what they do, see kind of how he performs in the playoffs, see if I hope we don't get like an Aaron Judge type thing where you've got all this production during the season and then, you get this struggles in the playoff type thing. I don't think we're going to see that with this gentleman. I think he's gonna ball out once the playoffs start.
Yeah, I don't see this kid slowing down one bit. I mean, it's amazing what he's done, and like you brought up, not only he's doing this at the at the plate, he can also tear you up on the mound too, and he hasn't been able to show that yet in LA. What he can do in that aspect, but for me, I mean, thinking about it, Mike, where does this rank him then now all time? I mean, does this move him up a list? Is he in a range of Babe Ruth now? Is he in these Barry Bonds talks? There's people that have Barry Bonds up there too. I'm not a Barry Bonds fan. We haven't really gotten into this talks about baseball as often as we thought we would. But, this is a sport where it's very hard to pick one go, right? I think I've talked about it in the past for me, I have to pick once on the a pitcher and also a batter fielder, right? Because you can't really just sit here and give it to just like, even though Babe Ruth could do it both ways, same thing as Ohtani, he can too. But there's also players that have been great that weren't pitchers too, right? So where does this rank Ohtani for you?
Trust me, folks, baseball fans, all that. I love this kid. I have issues with the contracts, but that's with any sport. But at least if you look from a production standpoint, he's showing the ability to say, hey, I'm showing I deserve at least a portion of that contract. But As much as I hate to say it, folks, and I love the guy. I still want to see more going forward. I mean, if he can continue this type of production, I don't want to drop him into that Babe Ruth mythology yet. Again, what he just did is insane. It certainly pushes it up the ladder. But I'd like to see just a little bit more here. I think obviously he's headed towards the Hall of Fame. I don't think he's there yet. I just still think the career's been a little too brief, even though he's been dominant every season he's played. But give me just a little bit more, and it doesn't have to be 50-50 every year. Let me see what he does next year with his pitching. Continues, with everything, every other aspect of his game. But I'll say this: I think if he stays healthy at the back end of his career, or here in the next few years, we may be literally talking about potentially one of the five greatest baseball players ever.
Yeah,
I can
yeah,
say that.
I totally agree.
I want to hold off on just oh man, let's get him in the hall right now. Let's
Yeah,
just hold
no,
off.
I
But I think it looks good.
I agree. Plus, I mean, the other thing is he still hasn't won a ring, right? So, I mean, we still got to put a ring on his finger too, which obviously this year's probably one of the best chances he's definitely going to have. Obviously, being in LA with that Dodgers team, I mean, he's definitely going to have a lot of chances. Obviously, with how stacked they are. So we'll
You
see.
know
I
what'd be
mean,
interesting, but
what's that?
what'd be interesting is to see if it all plays out, folks, because we haven't had the classic Dodger Yankee World Series
Yeah,
in forever. So that'd be kind of like a nice throwback feel if it works out. I don't think that's going to happen, but if it does, that could be real interesting. Judge, Ohtani, I mean, that's a storyline right there in itself if you're talking about the World Series. So
yeah, I
long
agree.
way to go to get to that point, but with Ohtani, uh, you know, potential to be top five all time is really it's there if everything continues,
Absolutely.
as he continues to develop.
Absolutely, I agree. I agree. But congratulations to Otani on the 50-50 club, first player to ever do that for sure. Moving on now. Let's kind of talk a little bit about this Thursday night game, Mike. Obviously, Jets, Patriots. It looked like Rogers was kind of rolling, right? Rogers kind of looked like that bad man he once was, right? Being able to run and pass at the same time. Um, he able to move the ball down the field pretty well on what we once thought kind of was a maybe possibly could be a okay Patriots defense, but that wasn't the case Thursday night here. But the other big talk is too on this Thursday night game, and I don't know if you noticed, was kind of the push off hug from Sala to Rogers coming off, and everybody's kind of making that a big deal. But for me, I don't know. I feel like as you got to think, Aaron Rodgers is definitely an older veteran, and the season's still young and this and that. So I know Salah's kind of definitely one of the. He's a player's coach. They love him, and he's all about the player stuff. But at the same time, it's like, dude, it's still early. Before we start giving the hugs, getting a little crazy. Let's just pump the brakes a little bit. Is kind of what I was thinking for him. But what did you take from the game yourself?
I got the enthusiasm from coach. I get it. You're coming off a rough season where expectations were high. When Aaron goes down, so everything just sort of bottoms out, and his job is being put into question. And I still think if the Jets were to struggle for some reason this year, he could have potential problems holding on to his job. So I get, him getting a little excited and those type of things. And Aaron with his, hey, come on, dude. I mean, we got a long way to go. Let's chill on the celebrations. Let's just focus on what we got to do. So I kind of like that perspective from Aaron. Um, the game itself, I didn't think there was a lot of fluff to it, or I should say, sexiness to it. It had its moments.
Yeah.
You're not going to get sexy with the Patriots anyway because it's about defense with them, no offense, and that's kind of what played out. We expected the Jets to win, that type of thing. So everything went per the script.
Well, now this game,
So
was this a turning point for the Jets, or is this just showing us that the Patriots are just not that good of a team? Um,
no, you get both. You get both.
I mean, because
You really do.
I mean, I get it, and I don't want to sit here and say, because there's a lot of people that I know and I've heard that took the Jets either AFC Championship game, even going to the Super Bowl, things like that. And for me, I don't want to sit here and say that was a turning point. I loved to see what they did. I think Rodgers looked like his old self, but there wasn't very much pressure on him. I mean, he had a lot of time to throw. He was able to scramble, get out, make the right plays. I mean, it was just like almost just practice to him out there again. But so when he gets some more pressure on him, Does he go back to what he was at the beginning? When against 49ers, right? He just didn't look the same, like the same guy.
Yeah.
What's changed,
Well,
or like I said, or is this just showing New England? Maybe we were a little bit hyped about New England.
no, and that's possible too. But I think, with the 49er game, it's just like with any team and any player coming off of injuries, things like that. I think it was a feeling out process. This is your first real game action. He didn't play in the preseason, so you really don't know where you're at aside from practice, and you're still not, because they're not pushing you in practice. There's not full contact. So the 49er game was a feeling out process to kind of for him to see where he was at. I think the Patriot game, first game at home, obviously it's nationally televised. I think he was feeling his oats, as they say, a little bit more. He felt a little bit more comfortable with the ankle. He looked good. He looked good. I was impressed with what I saw. Um, but to your point, I don't think we'll fully understand where he's at, and he won't either for a couple more weeks. I just think not so much that the Patriots defense isn't going to be decent. I think we both agree they will be. I think we saw what they're both going to be. I know I have the Jets going to the AFC Championship game, as we talked about, previously in other podcasts. We'll see how that plays out. So I think the game just sort of spoke to where they actually are. No surprises, nothing like that. So the Jets, you expect to continue to refine and improve. I would expect. Rodgers becomes more familiar with his receivers, and they just keep the train moving, so to speak.
Yeah.
For the Patriots, you gotta, like you talked about last week. If you've invested in this draft pick and Jacoby's out there not looking great, you may just want to put the kid out there and see what he's got. I mean, because if your defense is going to have an off night, or even if they are having a good night, but it's just not enough.
Yeah.
Obviously, Jacoby's not going to be the answer. So you might want to start looking to see what you got at your draft pick and just see where the season takes you. But I think right now we saw where both teams kind of are at.
I agree. I agree with you for sure. I think it's a little bit of mixture of both, like you said. The Jets kind of they stepped up their game. Rodgers was able to kind of look, people may say like a little Brady-esque or something like that towards him, but I still don't think. I think I jumped even myself, right, guys. And this week, this is why we call ourselves almost mediocre sports guys. We had some bad takes last week for sure, guys. There's a lot of teams that we talked about, and a lot of teams that we'll get into. Things that we know we were totally wrong on. I'm gonna be honest with you too. Maybe I jumped a little bit high on the Patriots. I liked what I seen the first two games. Obviously going against Burrow, things like that. They looked great. But at the same time, Aaron Rodgers is Aaron Rodgers. When he's locked in, he's a different quarterback, right? I mean, when he's locked and loaded, there's just no stopping him. He is a Tom Brady. He is a Patrick Mahomes. He is a Peyton Manning. When those guys are locked in, then that just, they're ready to go, and there's just no stopping them. And they'll put you away early for sure. So, moving on, guys, we're gonna try a new segment here called High and Low. We're gonna talk about a couple of games, 4 games that I brought up that I thought were key games for this last week. The first one's going to be the Vikings at the Niners. And Mike, are you high on this Vikings team right now, being possibly a Super Bowl contender, taking down a team like the Niners? Or are you low on just the Niners as far as defense? Maybe they're a little bit more, regressing. What are your thoughts?
I'll tell you what, bud. I'll say this: the the Vikings impressed me to a degree. Home game. So I give the Vikings all the credit in the world for this. Darnold came out and played pretty good. I still can't buy fully into the Vikings. I know their defense looks pretty solid, and if they stay healthy, they should be a team to be dealt with for the remainder of the season. I think. I do not see them as a Super Bowl team. I just don't. I don't think Darnold's a Super Bowl quarterback. Maybe he can prove me wrong, but I'm just not feeling it. They're going to have some injuries to deal with this coming week. So we'll kind of see. I'm still not. So if you ask me if I'm high on the Vikings, I'll say I'm lukewarm on the Vikings.
Okay.
I can't go full out high yet.
Okay.
I'm not low on the Niners. I think Um, again, a few injury problems. I really felt they didn't play like they could have. I'm sure a lot of people are starting to wonder where they're at, potentially at quarterback with Purdy. I'm not really overly concerned with this. He did have some struggles, but I'm not gonna say I'm low on the Niners. I'm still gonna say I'm still high on the Niners possibilities. Um, it's just a tough place to play. You go into that dome on the road. That's a tough place to play. It's a first home game. You know how those go. So it's a different atmosphere. But all credit to the Vikings. But I'm still going to go lukewarm on the Vikings. I'm still high on the Niners.
Nice. All right. Well, second game we got next here, talking about high low Raiders and the Ravens. This was huge, Mike. The Raiders pulling out a win late on the Ravens to now knock the Ravens to 0-2. Here's my question: are you high on the Ravens becoming now a team that can no longer make the playoffs, or are you low on the Raiders that maybe they're just not that good of a team and that maybe the Ravens aren't just that good? You know what I mean? Basically, they didn't even beat maybe not a very good team. Maybe the Ravens aren't that great.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. I'm actually a little bit high on the Raiders. I think this team is developing the personality of their head coach. I think Pierce is a Raider, and by that, he's in house. So when they brought him and they upped him to the position of head coach, um, I wasn't entirely familiar with the guy, but in watching kind of what began to develop last season and now what's starting to show itself this season, that was a big win. I mean, you're coming back from being behind on the road.
Yeah.
And I think they're beginning to show some signs of developing their coach's toughness. So I'm high on the Raiders improving as they go forward. I am high on the Ravens potentially not making the playoffs. And I have concerns now because last week, folks, actually both weeks, 1 and 2, Lamar Jackson's played pretty well. He's made a couple of suspect decisions during the games, but those things happen. But surprisingly, as you know, I've never been the biggest fan of this guy. But these two games have not. You can't sit here and say that Lamar cost you these games. He probably could have played a little bit better. This is a team loss, and team losses really losing to Kansas City. People say, "Well, it's at Kansas City. We lost. Okay, but that's to be expected." Yeah, but now you're 0-2.
Yeah.
This team is beginning to show that they have struggles holding on to leads.
For sure.
And now we're getting where these teams are getting a little bit older, and at some point if you continue to lose like this, the mind starts to say, look, maybe it's just not what we're going to be able to do.
Yep.
That's a tough thing to endure. So I really am. I'm high on right now, folks. The Ravens potentially not making the playoffs, and that surprises me to say that after week 2. There's a long way to go, I get it, but right now, I gotta say I'm kind of high on that possibility.
Definitely. All right, next game we have is the Saints at the Cowboys, where the Saints just destroyed these Cowboys. So, Mike, are you high on this New Orleans offense, or are now you low on this Dallas Cowboys defense?
I am absolutely at the top of Mount Everest on this New Orleans football team. I didn't see this coming. I don't think anybody saw this coming.
No.
This is insane. I mean, putting up that many points 2 weeks in a row. Now, people would say, yeah, well, they beat, Carolina first week. And, you'd say, yeah, I get it. But then you're going into the Big D, and you light these guys up, and you got it. And you're talking about how they were scoring and how quickly and often they were scoring. I mean, this wasn't some joke.
Yeah.
These guys are just going out there and putting the wood to the Cowboys. I'll tell you what. I could see the Saints getting home field advantage in the playoffs right now. That's how high I am on these guys.
For sure.
When you look at Dallas, man, folks, you Dallas fans, I know it's bad every year, and I know you got to listen to Stephen A. every week. You may be hearing this a lot more from this guy because your team kind of has got some problems.
Definitely.
A defense we thought after week 1 was already playoff ready, and you go and you lay this at home after your last home game was a playoff game against the Green Bay Packers and the same exact outcome with a different defensive coordinator.
Yep.
And this is what you do?
Well, we will definitely
What's
be
this
getting into
about?
this too because obviously this week we have the Cowboys playing the Ravens this week. Obviously, when we get into our picks, we're gonna dive in a little bit more onto this game because this is a huge game for both of these two teams right now, especially the Ravens. Like we said, just talking about them dropping that game to the Raiders, there's a possibility they could start off 0-3. Um,
Yeah.
Finish this one off, Mike. Obviously, this is the big game that everybody talked about. Could Burrow do it? Is Burrow magic the thing? That you got the Bengals and the Chiefs. What are your highs and lows from this game? What were your highs and lows just watching this game? Because a lot of people now are talking that are the Chiefs really that team now, or Mahomes was not very good, right? He was 18 of 25, 151, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. Kelsey, 1 catch for 5 yards. But they still found a way to win this game, right? Now,
Yeah.
so what are your highs and your lows from this? Does Cincinnati bounce back from this? And is Kansas City still a top-tier team to win the Super Bowl?
Well, you never count Kansas City out. As long as you got a number 15 back there and the team is relatively healthy, you never count them out. So they're still at the very top of my high-end list is to be in the team to beat in the AFC. That's not going to change unless they just are decimated by injuries like the Rams or something like that. So I'm not overly concerned about Kansas City. Obviously, they've got some injuries moving forward here, and that could potentially cause some bumps in the road, at least until you get certain players back. But as long as you got 15 back there, I'm not going to rule them out from winning any football game. So I'm not overly concerned about Kansas City. Like we talked about last week, I expected a little bit more out of Kelsey, but as we both know, Cincinnati seems to have Kansas City's number. For whatever reason, teams have those teams that just give them fits. And, Kansas City has been Cincinnati. And really, Cincinnati probably wins this game if you just don't have a boneheaded play by your safety.
Exactly.
You just give them the game. This is where Cincinnati continues to bite themselves in the backside every season. They start off slow, and then eventually they get the wheels moving, and everything starts to click.
Yeah.
But they just find a way to get themselves in these early season holes, and they got to dig their way out of it. My take from the Cincinnati Kansas City game is I think I'm high on what I see with Cincinnati. I hope the receivers, obviously we've talked about these guys. I just want them to settle down, focus on football, and let's just put contracts and stuff aside. And let's just try to win some ball games here. And I think that will probably happen. So I am high on Cincinnati. I think what they showed in the Kansas City game was positive. You just got to fine tweak the mentality and situational football, and make sure you don't make those dumb mistakes. Because really, they should be 1-1 right now.
Absolutely.
They really should be. And Kansas City should be 1-1. But I really do. I'm high on both going forward. As I know, I've got Cincinnati going to the Super Bowl, so I know they've got a lot to prove.
Definitely.
But we'll see how this plays out. But I think
and not to mention though, this is kind of big. Is Pacheco sustaining that injury is now on the IR, so that kind of takes away from the running game. Might have to mean Mahomes has to throw a little bit more. But obviously, we're gonna get into this, guys. We're gonna take a quick break now. And then when we come back, we're going to hit you guys up with our picks of the week. All right, we are back, guys, and it is time for our picks of the week. All right, guys, it is time now. We are going to get into our picks this week. Like I said, guys, last week, this is the reason why we call ourselves mediocre. For this reason right here, where Mike, I think I only had maybe probably 6 right last week, if I'm not mistaken. I have to take a look again, what we picked, but man, it was a rough week, but lots of surprises, lots of craziness going on with all that here. But let's just go ahead and get right into these ones. First game I have listed out here, we'll just go ahead and start with the Broncos and the Bucks. Right now, the Bucks are favored as a 6-point favorite.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, that to me is, if I had to pick one game, folks, sometimes they say, hey, can you pick a lock of the week on a win or the spread? I locked down on both with Tampa Bay. I don't know what's going on in Denver. I watched the Pittsburgh game. I was not impressed. I know that, Nick's put up some cheap yards late and his legs work, but the game plan is pathetic. Dump passes don't win you games. And if you're afraid to let your quarterback challenge the field with his arm, then I don't know what to tell you, Sean, because if that's the philosophy you're going to take, why'd you invest in the guy in the first place? Because I thought this guy had an arm that you could trust. Supposedly, he has the intelligence. He picked up on your game book, your playbook pretty quick. Yet all I see when I'm watching him out there is some indecisive. And I know he's a rookie. I know it, Denver fans. I get it. But you're 2 games into this, and your point production is pathetic. I mean, you only mustered 3 points against Pittsburgh, or what was it, 7 points, Bud? 13-7, is that what it was? Yeah, 7 points. 7 points at home. And you're going against the Pittsburgh offense. It's still pretty limited. I mean, Fields is not going to shake the world, but there's some problems there. On the flip side, man, Tampa Bay, this may be one of the more well-rounded football teams in all the league, folks. I've got Baker early, bud, is an early season MVP threat. I've got Josh.
Why not? I mean, what he's doing, I totally agree with everything you're saying on this game too. This is really I can't remember if you remember the linebacker that said about the play calling for Denver, how small the play call was, whatever. That's ridiculous. I mean,
they laughed about it.
It's one of those things where Sean and them as an organization need to understand. You have to find not only a quarterback that, yes, has maybe the arm strength, maybe has the ability to run and this, that, but Sean Payton has one of the most craziest playbooks that is hard for anybody to understand. So that also is something that needs to come into play when you're doing your scouting is how do they do with reading plays, with understanding a playbook and things like that. If you have to dumb it down that easily for defense, and I brought it up last week. I said this defense is so good. This Pittsburgh team is a good defense. The offense isn't great, but the defense is really, really good. You are not going to you're not going to trick a Mike Tomlin Steelers defense. I'm sorry. But having a small playbook like that, he's going to figure it out, and they did. And that's why Denver didn't move the ball, and they didn't do anything the whole game.
Is he not invested in his running backs? I mean, because the first 2 games, I've seen no commitment to any running game. You don't allow it to develop. And even when you get down, it's almost like they panic and let's just start throwing the ball.
Yeah.
And I don't understand this because you've got a 1-2 punch at running back. Why don't you try to establish this?
I agree.
I mean, good grief.
I agree.
I mean, if your quarterback is so challenged, and maybe it is, I'll tell you what, I said it last week. If both struggles this week, then maybe you got to throw Stidham out there then and just let the kids settle down and learn more about the books or whatever you got to do with this. But if he's out there getting just beat up, and I think he's going to be, to tell you the truth, but I don't think you're going to see that 200-plus yard performance this week. Tampa Bay is going to beat the crap out of this kid.
Of course, I agree. I think this game is not going to be close. I'm with you. I'm taking the Bucks. I got the Bucks to cover. They're at home in this game too. Baker's going to have a field day throwing the ball. I think they should be able to run the ball. Start your fantasy players. You got Tampa Bay fan. Maybe the only person possibly Depending on who he's going to be, I'm assuming Sertan's going to probably follow Evans possibly, or they may have him go back and forth between Edwards and Godwin. If he is on Evans, maybe Evans doesn't go off, but Evans is so consistent that he might still be able to get some off of Sertan for sure. But no, I agree with you, Mike. Bucks cover for sure on this one.
Yeah.
Next one I have is Giants at the Browns. Looks like Cleveland is a 6.5 point favorite on this one.
Well, I don't know if you saw the reports this week, and I think we both saw this coming. I think we may have even talked about this last week. The players are starting to lose confidence in the head coach with the Giants.
Yeah.
And I get it. I get it. And I understand this team they are severely limited, folks. We talked about this last week. The Giants may be the second worst team in football behind Carolina. I mean, it's that bad. That Washington game was pathetic.
Yeah.
Washington is not a world beater, folks. But you let Washington score on the only time Washington didn't score in that game, folks, was on a kneel down before halftime.
Yep.
How pathetic is this? That's pathetic. You're an NFL football team. You went to the playoffs just a few years ago with the same quarterback and the same head coach. And granted, you've lost some players, but this is where you're at? And so I see where the players may now be becoming slowly non-invested. And if you've got that problem, you have no season. And on the flip side, Cleveland, I don't know. Jacksonville is a joke. I just don't, there's a lot going on down there too. We'll talk about that. But Jacksonville's falling apart. Cleveland took advantage of, I think, what's now really just a situation that's just rotting away down there in Jacksonville. So Cleveland found a way with Deshaun having an above average game, but still mediocre, to pull out a victory. You said 6.5, bud?
Yeah, 6.5 right now, Cleveland. Yeah,
it's in Cleveland.
It's in Cleveland. This one's tough too because the problem is for me is I can definitely see this game being somewhat close and not a very good game. But also I can see, because of Daniel Jones being a guy to turn over the ball a little more, I could see like a pick six that like at the end of the game that maybe puts them in the like that they're up by like 7 or they're up by something like that, and then they run it back and win by like 14 or something. I could see the defense doing that.
See, I think the defense for Cleveland steps it up this game. I think they're trying to...
I want to say, and like you said about the Giant and just not being able to, but I did see a little bit of sparks with Neighbors and Jones together that I kind of liked. So I'm going to go ahead and say the Browns win this game, but they don't cover.
See, I'm gonna flip the cover because I think they're gonna get in trouble early, the Giants, and think again, if this thing with the players is true, that's just gonna be this avalanche of, okay, here we go again.
Yeah.
I think that's gonna work against the Giants. I'm gonna take Cleveland to win the game, obviously, and to cover on the 6.5. But I just think the Giants in a world of trouble. They may be a max 3-win football team this year, folks.
Yeah.
Max 3 wins. That's bad.
For sure. All right. Next game on the list is Packers at Titans. The Titans are a 3-point favorite in this, though.
See, and I'm stuck on this one because I'm getting reports now that Love is apparently, I don't know if he's ahead of schedule. I don't know if he's...
this too, but I mean, he's not coming back this soon. There's just no way that he's getting ready to. But I mean, I liked what Levis did last week. I mean, Malik Willis did last week for the Packers. Yeah. I thought he did well against probably what people thought that maybe Anthony Richardson would kind of maybe take over the game a little bit more. Colts kind of maybe go off to a win because of Love being out. But, I thought he did great. So this game kind of makes it a little bit tougher to go against. I am surprised, though, with the way that the Packers did play last week, that the Titans still are a 3-point favorite. But in the end, the Titans did play pretty well against Aaron Rodgers and those Jets, too, right? That defense was pretty good. All it takes is maybe to make a turnover or so. So I am going with Packers in this game. So obviously Titans won't cover on it, but I do have the Packers winning for me.
Yeah, I agree with you, but the thing with Levis is, I don't agree.
Those mistakes are just terrible.
I know. Yeah,
it's not one of those, where you're just trying to make a play happen. I mean, he thinks he's trying to make a play happen, but no. I mean, when you're throwing into this cover and you're flying around and you're just letting the ball fly. I mean, that you're going to hurt your team
No, I get
every
it.
single time. That's why they're 0-2. That is exactly
Yeah.
why they are. It's Levis is the reason that Tennessee is 0-2. Just put it out
Well,
there. That's exactly what it is.
special teams didn't help him against Chicago. I mean, I'm not going to put every single thing on Levis, but he's obviously contributed
But
greatly to it. Here's
the
my
picks
problem.
is just so terrible that you
No, they
can't
are,
put it on
but
anybody else on that.
here's my other problem. And I get that you're a first year coach. I understand that. I understand you need to rip this dude on the sideline. Uh, but kind of like with the Sean Payton thing with Russ a few years ago or last year, you're ripping this kid on the sideline, this guy on the sideline. I understand that. When you step to the podium post game and you literally just bury this dude under the bus, and I get it. He's not lying. I understand that. But how about being a little bit discretionary and not just basically telling everybody in the room and everybody watching that the guy sucks and that he costs us everything. The kid's already struggling with confidence, and you probably buried it now because now he's literally afraid to throw the ball. I guarantee you this kid is.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to contribute greatly to this. I do like Green Bay and what I'm seeing with it. I think the team is coming together. They're helping the kid, buffer through some things. If Love comes back next week or whatever, wow, that's kind of crazy. I didn't think he was ready for that. We'll see. But I'll tell you what,
Well,
the more
and they
wins
ran the
Green Bay,
ball more. Joe Jacobs.
back.
Jacobs got the ball more. He ran more. And that was the big thing that they
That's
needed
what you
to do.
gotta do.
Exactly. They brought him in for
That's
a
what
reason.
they-
You got rid of Jones to bring in Jacobs. This is what happens. You still got to let him run the ball. So yeah, no, I
Yeah,
agree.
I do. I like Green Bay to win this game, but obviously, with the win that covers on the spread and everything. But I do like Green Bay here, and what a tremendous position to be in if they can sneak out some wins until Love does come back. I mean, this team could still be massively dangerous, and they still look good even without Love out there.
Yeah, I agree. Next game is Bears at Colts. Indy is a 1-point favorite in this one. Obviously, Mike, this one's kind of tough, right? Because Caleb has not showed up at all this year yet, right? And now, when is that game gonna show? Right? He's gonna go, but now the other big thing is Richardson needs a victory. He needs to win a game. They're 0-2 to start the season. Bears 1-1. For me in this, Colts at home, I like it. I'm like I said, I have not been a fan of Caleb Williams. I'm still not a fan of him. He still has not showed up. I think Richardson comes out and outplays Caleb in this game too. And I think we're going to finally see that maybe the whole hype about Caleb Williams was we needed to slow down a little bit. We need to pump the brakes.
What'd you say the spread was?
1. Indy's a 1-point
Colts
favorite.
by 1?
Yeah.
Yeah. A couple of takes from this, and they both involve the quarterbacks. What I took from the Houston game with Chicago is they've got a very good defense.
Mm-hmm.
They've got a defense that can maybe help get them some wins.
Yeah.
Another thing I took from the game with Houston was Caleb's toughness. I saw some cheap shots by the Texans that I did not agree with, but I didn't see a kid getting up and pointing fingers and getting in the face of the defenders. He just said, let's go, basically. Hey, I get it. Let's play ball, whatever. So I can appreciate that. I'm with you on Caleb as far as I'm not sold on this kid long term. We'll see. Richardson has some problems. And I don't know if it's because he's still dealing with some lingering injury issues, some confidence, but he's concerning me with some decision making and some of the throws he's making, that type of thing. I think I'm actually going to take the Bears to sneak one out here because of their defense. I think the defense can possibly push Richardson into a couple of turnovers, fumbles, or picks. I think that could sway. I don't see a high scoring game here. But I think potentially one of the picks or a possible fumble could sway the outcome of the game, maybe late. But I just like that defense that Chicago's playing right now, and it looks like it's a turnover-generating defense. I think this is one they can sneak out. So I do like the Bears to pull off, I guess you could say, road upset.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a close game.
You. I'm with you on the defense, but I kind of feel like the Colts and Bears are kind of the same teams as far as I don't think the Colts' defense is that bad. They played really well against CJ in the Texans early, right? Game they probably could have won. Obviously, they probably should have beat the Packers this last week too. They probably should be 2-0 themselves also, but they're 0-2 instead. I liked what they did against Houston. I know they know that they have a chance. You know, you talked about the Jags. We'll get into that. Obviously, one of the Monday night games
Yeah.
against the Bills. That game's probably not going to be a fun game to watch. But had that happen, they know that, you know, obviously the Texans stays 2-0, but the Titans are 0-2. The Colts are a pretty good team, I think. I'm gonna go with the team that has a little bit better quarterback. And Richardson has shown me so far that he's a better quarterback so far than Caleb Williams this year. I like both teams. I like the defenses. I think they're both. It's not gonna be a very high scoring game. That's for sure. I don't see this being high scoring at all. Kind of probably the same type of score that there was this last week with the Bears playing against the Texans. I think it's gonna be kind of that same thing. But I am going to go with the Colts. They will cover. They probably win by like 3 is what I'm going to have. But I do like the Colts because the other thing is they really, really need this game. The Colts have to. So I think it's very important. I think they're stressed. And just like I said, it's the Jags are 0-2. Titans are 0-2. We played Houston really good. We should probably be 2-0, beating the Packers possibly too. But even 1-1 puts you in a good situation. 1-2 is still a very good situation for them, especially if the Jags do lose. Titans come lose to the Packers. Also, 1-2 would be really, really good for them, and I think it's very important that they get that win. So that is a must win for me. Is the Colts beating the Bears this week?
Yeah, the last thing I'll say about this game is the bottom line, I'd like to see both quarterbacks look better.
Yeah.
Uh, well, we'll see what
For
happens.
sure, we'll see. Next game, one of the big games of the week. Both 2-0 teams. Texans at the Vikings. Houston is a 2-point favorite over the Vikings right now.
Yeah, I tell you, the injuries do concern me with Minnesota. I know it's a tough place to play. You know, you go up there. I still like what I'm so high on what the Texans are doing, but I still think they're in a feeling out process. You know, I really don't feel the Chicago game should have really been that difficult for them. I really don't. They should have just absolutely put them away. So I was a little surprised by that, particularly at home. But I do like what the Titans are doing. Stroud continues to show that this last year was not just some freak of nature, so to speak. This kid is going to be legit, and he's going to be one of the really good ones, possibly one of the great ones. But on both sides of the ball, this team can be a wrecking crew. Minnesota, again, we talked about this at the top of the show. I'm just lukewarm on these guys, but I'm just not. I'm just not sold on the Vikings. They've got the good defense. Darnold just does not strike me as the guy you worry about coming into play, particularly on the road. But we'll see. He could prove me wrong. But the injuries right now could be a factor with Minnesota. I do like the Titans to go in and win this, or the Texans to go in and win this game. I do like that spread. And I like them to cover on that spread.
Yeah, I see. And for me, I'm so much high on one side and so low on the other. I am so low on the Vikings. I still am not. I'm waiting for that Vikings game where they just get blown out and things start to falter. You know, we've seen it happen time and time again where they could even start this year off going 4 or 5-0, right? Next thing you know, they lose 6, you know, of the next 8 and things like that, and it's just a terrible season. I'm still not there until you keep showing me that consistency on there. I started off the season huge, high on this Texas team. I think D'Amico Ryans is going to win Coach of the Year. I think obviously they're going to take this division, so I'm going to stick with riding the high horse. I think Houston does come in. I think there maybe I said this last week with the 49ers, so hopefully I'm not jinxing these teams that are really good. I'm not going to say they're going to blow them out because I totally agree with you, Mike, and I think the youth showed up this, at a primetime game going against the Bears. It was huge. It was the Stroud, Caleb Williams type thing, and I think just, the lights, the bright lights, the primetime kind of got the better of them, and that's the youth of the Texans, right? They're still young. Some of these games maybe they're not fully prepared for or realize, or when when it's a little bit too clutch for them, maybe they're not prepared for that. So that's why getting Diggs was huge, right? Because that's a veteran that can make those plays when maybe somebody can't.
He played well.
He did. He had a good game. So that shows exactly that they made a good decision there. But for me, I am gonna go with the Texans. They are gonna cover. I like the cover on this one too. But I think hopefully this is the week that we might see. And like I said, guys, even if the Vikings do win this game, they'd have to blow this team out too for me to start sitting here saying, okay,
Yeah.
now I can maybe take a step back and look a little deeper into this.
You
But here's
know,
the thing, right? Sorry, one more thing I'm just gonna add
no, you're
is
good. Go
just like
ahead.
anytime you have a guy like Justin Jefferson, though, if you're even a subpar quarterback that can just kind of let it fly down there, he's gonna make a play for you. So if he can do
Yeah.
it time and time again, guys, I mean, it's one of those things too where when you got a great player like that, you got to find a way to lock him up, and that's something the 49ers did not do this last week.
Yeah, and real quick, and it affects, it goes back to our first segment about high-low, and obviously with the Vikings again right here. The Vikings, I should say the 49ers miss McCaffrey. I mean, you miss this dude. I mean, you got great run production out of your situation with him not being in there, but at some point, this does become a factor. And not to take anything away from Minnesota, but you didn't have to deal with McCaffrey last week, and that's a big deal. That's a big deal, home or on the road.
They
So
still rushed for 100
credit
yards.
to you.
Mason still got 100 on
No, I'm
him.
not saying that, but I'm saying, but McCaffrey is such a triple threat guy. I mean, heck, they even had to use him at quarterback in the NFC Championship game 2 years ago because they ran out of people. So that shows you his versatility. So you miss that,
Yeah,
and that affects the outcome of things. So not to take away from Minnesota, good win for you, but Minnesota, like Bud's talking about, we'll see what happens 5, 6 weeks from now. We'll see when that first game comes up that you just absolutely don't play like you're supposed to.
for sure. All right, next game we got Eagles at the Saints. New Orleans is a 2.5 favorite on this one. Now, Mike, are you? This is kind of one of the questions I had to you. Are you surprised? And is that a little low for New Orleans? 2.5 only. I'm not.
I
I'm
think it
not
is.
sold on that Eagles secondary. I think he's. I
I'll tell
mean,
you what.
if New Orleans can go to play Dallas, their defense being what I would say is way more elite than the Eagles defense, especially the secondary. If they can go in and light up the Cowboys like that, this Eagles secondary better be ready, because if not, they're gonna go put up another 40 points again for the third straight week.
Eagles are a mess. You're right, bud. You called this week one that you weren't impressed by Philadelphia. I told you I thought they could challenge, and maybe they probably do. It comes down to Dallas or Philadelphia for the division title, but that could be with 10 wins,
Yeah,
and possibly, I mean, 10 wins is because that's where we may be looking at. So to your point, I'm not sold on Philadelphia. I'm not. That defense, something is absolutely off with this team on both sides of the ball. And it continues to show up, and Philadelphia continues to struggle. They showed it in that game with Atlanta. All credit to Kirk Cousins. But come on, I mean, you guys, all you need to prevent a touchdown, not a field goal, a touchdown, and you can't do
see,
it.
and this is exactly why, and I'm glad you brought this up, because here's the thing: is a lot of people that I listen to, a lot of the podcasts, a lot of the shows that I'm watching, it's all about the Saquon play. It's all about Saquon Barkley dropped it, and then Saquon's falling this and that. Okay, here's the thing: that play call is one of the safest, best play, other than running the ball. Like, yes, you could run the ball, but you still, if you want to say, oh, you risk dropping the play or you miss an interception, so what? You can still risk a fumble at the same time. But either way, it's a safe, good play that just didn't plan out for you. Okay, so what? You still get the lead. I watched Kirk Cousins run that offense like it was practice with nobody out there. It was just walkthroughs all the way down to score a touchdown. That was ridiculous to watch. So if you're telling me that Kirk Cousins could take that Atlanta Falcons team, which everybody was high on at the beginning of the year, now drop back down to them because they didn't look great for week one, this and that against the Steelers, yada yada. Now he's going to go against Derek Carr and this New Orleans offense that has put up 40-plus points each of the first 2 weeks. Go ahead and put up 40 points against this Cowboys defense that is known to be great, probably a top 5 defense, what we thought. And now they're going to go against this Eagles defense. That's the secondary, just not great. And Hurts has been turning over the ball too. So for me, 2.5 is not close. It's way too. That's way too small for me. I think this should be higher. I think New Orleans should be like a 6 favorite at least, probably. And I think for sure, I got New Orleans winning this game, and I got them covering no matter what, for sure.
Yeah, look at this game. I mean, look at New Orleans, I should say. This team, I talked about Tampa Bay, folks, being one of the more well-rounded teams. If you look on both sides of the ball, the Saints might actually be one of the, if not the most well-rounded. I'm not saying they are. I'm saying they could be. Look at this. I mean, Carr is lighting it up. Kamara is running the ball insane. Your receivers are getting production. Your defense stepping up. I mean, these guys are already midseason form. They actually look like their starters played in the preseason, and balled out just to get ready for the season. These guys are lights out playing football, and I tell you what, I agree with you, but the 2.5 or whatever is not nearly enough. I think the Saints win by over 10 points.
Yeah.
I really do. I think this is not going to be as great a game as people may hope for. I think the Saints could literally. I don't. You know what? They might score 40 points.
Yeah.
I could see this.
I could too. I could easily see it.
In fact, I'm going to predict the New Orleans Saints score 40 points in their third consecutive game to start the season. That's impressive. That's crazy.
There you go. Put it in the books.
Yeah.
The next one we got here. Two 2-0 teams that probably everybody didn't expect to start off 2-0, but it's the Chargers at the Steelers. Steelers are a 2.5-point favorite on this one.
Yeah, I tell you. Well, now Herbert may not start. He may not even play in this game. Well, it's a game time decision.
The key to this is, the Steelers basically only have to understand that all I got to do is stop JK, right? That's the only thing. It's just run. They're gonna run and run and run. I don't know if you could run on this Steelers defense though. That's the big key. Yeah. And like you're saying, does Herbert play? Does he not? And if he doesn't, and you can't run the ball on them, it might be a long day for the Chargers. It might be a really long day.
Yeah.
And this might be one of those games where the Steelers, if Herbert does not play and they cannot run the ball like they want to, the Steelers defense might actually win this game for them. They might score more points than their offense might in this one to win in this game.
What's the spread, bud?
2.5, Pittsburgh.
2.5. Again, folks, we watched the Bronco game. I saw enough out of Justin with his mobile. The one pass he made, Bud, down the right sideline that initially Surtain got called for it was a holding penalty on Pittsburgh, where he completed over Surtain for like 40 or 45 yards right down the sideline.
Yeah.
And with Fields moving out to his right, was one of the prettiest throws I literally have seen probably in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
I could not believe that dime he put down the right sideline. That was absolutely beautiful. He has the ability to roll out. He can put the ball where it needs to be. It's going to be a low-scoring game. It's unfortunate because I agree with you. I think the Steelers win the game. I think they cover. They'll be 3-0, but let's get real here. That's a pretty empty 3-0. I mean, they've got the defense, but you're not really a 3-0 football team. I mean, but you take what you get and you run with it and you hope for the best. We'll see what happens. But if Steelers can't win this game with Herbert not in the game, then maybe they do have a problem. But I don't see that happening. I see Pittsburgh winning this game. I say they cover, obviously. It's going to be a low-scoring game. I can see like a 16-9, something like that. I don't know. Who knows?
Yeah, for me, looking at this game, this game is huge for the Steelers because we haven't got to it yet, either one of them, but obviously Ravens playing the Cowboys, the Commanders playing the Bengals. If the Bengals and the Ravens both lose this week, go to 0-3. If the Browns lose, go 1-2. Steelers find a way to win this game in 3-0. They are looking good, right, for this division. I mean, obviously the Browns even going 2-1. That's crazy too. But for me in this one, it's a huge game. But I'm kind of starting to, and this game's going to kind of tell me too, because I think this is one of the bigger tests. Because obviously I don't think the Broncos was a great test for them. They did what they were supposed to do. The defense shut them down. And they won the game the way that they're supposed to. I liked what I seen against the Falcons because what we've seen the Falcons do, obviously, especially against the Eagles, and it looks like the offense is kind of finding its way now. For them to shut down the Falcons the way they did, I want to see what they do. If they do find a way to shut down this Chargers running game, shut down this offense of the Chargers, and win this game too, I'm going to start kind of wondering if this can kind of be one of those teams like the 2000 Ravens, the 15 Broncos, the 85 Bears, where the defense will be able to try to see how far they can lead them. And we all know that teams that have great defenses like this, what's that old saying? Defense wins championships. I want to see if this team is worthy of doing that. And I think this is kind of one of the bigger weeks to kind of show that if they could possibly do that. And like I said, if they do find a way to win and Commanders and Cowboys pull off those wins, ooh, Bengals and Ravens at 0-3 and the Steelers at 3-0. Tomlin's looking good. Tomlin's looking real good.
Yeah, I guess and I agree with you on those points, but I think for me with Pittsburgh, and again, get to 3-0. Hey, great job. You need to build as much of a cushion as you can because you haven't hit any of your divisional games yet. And we know, that we talked about that division. Sometimes they beat each other up so bad that by the time they get to the playoffs, they don't have enough gas left to really do certain things. So I'll be curious. This is where Pittsburgh will fully convince me. If they're still doing okay or fairly well and they hit the divisional games and then they start, continuing this pattern, then you really got to look at Pittsburgh and say, man, if you didn't think Tomlin was a great head coach, you better start reassessing your opinion because this is a lot of him doing it. Last thing I'll say is about Pittsburgh is I do have concerns. Watt typically tends to have injuries at some points during the season. We'll see what happens. That obviously is a factor if he does get hurt. Well, hopefully it doesn't happen, but if it does, I'll be curious to see how the team rallies around, that situation. But right now, kudos to Pittsburgh. Let's see if you can keep it going.
Yeah, I mean, I'm taking Pittsburgh to win, but I am not taking them to cover.
Really?
That's how close I think this game probably will end up being. But it's going to be defense.
No, so I like them to cover. I like them to win and cover.
Okay. I like it. I like it for sure. Next game, this one's a weird game, Mike. Lions coming off a loss to the Bucks. And then you got the Cards with the win last week, right? Both 1-1. Detroit is a 3-point favorite. But that Cards team looked real good, Mike. Marvin Harrison Jr. finally showed up, right? We were a little worried after week 1 with the only one catch for 4 yards and then just exploded this last week with Kyler. Did they find their stride together, or do the Lions find a way to kind of knock Arizona back down to reality? Mike, your boy Kyler, are you having any feelings about him differently now or no?
Well, you and I talked about this during the week after the games. I didn't, they went up to Buffalo. They played fairly well first half. Second half, there's a little bit of a collapse across the board. Kyler didn't play well either. Last week, the most decimated team in the NFL right now with injuries is the Rams with 12 injuries. That you have to take into account. When you lose both starting receivers, you got problems. You got problems on your offensive line. You got problems. The Rams are in for a long season now, and I had these guys projected to make the playoffs and do some make some noise. Probably not going to happen now, even if Stafford balls out. You asked me about Kyler, and I talked to Bud about this during the week, folks. I'm not ready yet to apologize to Kyler. I need to see more. This game, if you can ball out in this game, even though it's at home, you show me this, then I'll start to say, hey, kid, you look like you're finally putting down the Xbox and you're focusing more on reality. And so I like what I'm seeing out of Kyler. I love what I'm seeing out of Harrison.
Yeah.
This kid has potential to be insanely legit.
I agree.
That being said, we talked about Detroit and how they've shown championship, mentality. Because of that, and if we put Campbell's mentality aside, and he has got to deal with this at some point, he's got to stop doing these fourth down things.
Yeah.
I have Detroit going in and winning this game, bud.
It's
going to be this is a good game to watch.
I think this game's going to kind of I think this game's going to kind of show where both these teams are actually at. This is actually, like you said, it's going to be a good game. It's a tough test for both teams. Is Arizona actually on the rise and they find a way to win this game? Or is Detroit, and that means, Detroit, if they do lose this, then that means Detroit's kind of on the decline, right? Maybe they're not as good, which is really going to be bad for me. I mean, I got the Lions 1-1 this year. Ravens are 0-2. Those are my Super Bowl picks, so that sucks for me right now. But I think both teams can make adjustments. I think they'll be okay. We'll get into that with the Ravens game, but for me, I think the Lions do come out here and finally make, I think this is a game that they finally go out and just win. I think we're a little too bumped up, and I totally agree. The Rams thing, right? They're hurt, they're decimated everywhere. I mean, how they got 3 or 4 wide receivers out? Your top 2, Puka and Kupp out. Now, I mean, there's just nothing that Stafford can do. right now. The running game just isn't an option either. It seems like for them at all. But
But the Lions got
so for me, I think this game right now will show where these two teams are at. If the Cardinals win, it'll kind of show the Lions are on decline. But I think the Lions kind of come in and give Arizona kind of the back to reality type thing that you guys are good, you guys are okay, but you're not a good team yet. So I like the Lions to win. I like them to cover for sure on this one myself.
Yeah, and I definitely think it'll be a good game. I mean, it'll be a tough game for Detroit to pull out. And like you said, but if Arizona can ball out and win the game, good for them. Potentially, if that does happen, maybe Seattle and Arizona do have a chance to battle out. Or obviously, the Niners will be there. The Rams are done probably, but it could create a potential interesting three-team, parlay, if you will, to see who's going to sneak out the division title. We'll see how that plays out.
For sure, for sure. All right, next game we have the Panthers at the Raiders. Las Vegas is a 6-point favorite in this one at home.
Did I don't even know this is awful, but I feel bad for Bryce. I do. This is awful.
Bryce is benched, guys. So sorry.
Yeah.
This for people that don't know this. Obviously, Bryce Young did get benched. Andy Dalton will be starting this game against the Raiders. So take that into consideration. If some of you guys are Dalton fans, or maybe you guys think that he can kind of make a difference out there than Bryce, then maybe you don't think the Raiders maybe cover. I mean, does Andy Dalton make a difference on the cover though? Right, because that's a high. 6 is high.
That's a good point.
Does Dalton make a difference to maybe keep this game at a 3-point game? Right, because the Raiders don't have a great defense. Andy Dalton is a veteran. He knows how to. I mean, the problem is they just don't have a lot of weapons around there. But they do have Thielen. No. I like Thielen. If there's a way maybe two veterans can kind of at least keep the game close, those are the two that could make it happen, right? If you're going to have two guys, those are the two that you want to make it happen. But this game's tough. Obviously, the Raiders should win. I mean, they're coming off a great win to Baltimore. That's a huge win. They played well. Minshew was on fire, but at the same time, that Ravens defense, like I said, we'll get into this more, but it's just not great in the secondary right now. But then again, that whole Panthers team is just not great. So if Gardner can kind of chew up a Ravens team that's good, maybe they do take over against this Panthers team. But I am going to go with the Raiders, and I will take them to cover. I will just take. I mean, if the Panthers are just there's a lot of problems there in Carolina right now. A lot.
There really is, but I tell you what, this is that classic, as they say. I think it has a potential to be that classic setup game. Ravens coming, or the Ravens off of a big road win. They were down. They were basically dead in the water, and they come back and win the game. Obviously, I think that gives you that confidence as you go forward. That being said, when you're coming off a big win, like Anthony said, on the road against a good football team who played in the AFC Championship game last year, you're coming back home to play the Panthers. Might be a little hard to get motivated, because you're like, it's the Panthers. I mean, crap, what can they do? You get Dalton out there, a seasoned veteran. Are the Panthers going to win this game? No. But like Anthony was talking about, he brought up a great point, because that's where I was going to go. I think the spread's a little too high. I think Dalton, even though there's not a lot to work with, he's a smart guy. He's seen a lot. I think he'll have enough to potentially keep Carolina under the spread. And I think only because the Raider players are maybe just overlooking Carolina a little bit. So I'm going to take the Raiders to win this game, but the Panthers to somehow find a way just to stay just under the spread.
Okay, I got a question for you, though. I got a question for you, because now you've seen both of these teams. Now, and I don't want to go as far as to say that Carolina would be winless this year, right? There's a chance they could, maybe, but at the same time, I don't like the looks of this team. You got to see the winless Bucks back in the day. Which team do you think is worse? That Bucks team or this Panthers team? And I get, and I'm not even going to say, because I know the Lions have been winless, but that Lions team that went winless, I think would actually beat the crap out of this Carolina team or that Bucks team, because there was Stafford and Calvin were those teams back then. That I think wasn't it Calvin and Stafford played with that team that was winless. So I think you put them against those two teams, they probably win. So it has to be between that Bucks and this Carolina team. Like I said, you got to see them, so I can't really elaborate a little bit on the Bucks team, but I know they were pretty bad. But what do you think?
Yeah, but the Bucks, that particular team, they went through back-to-back seasons where this became a problem. They had an incredibly long
Carolina's
streak
kind of
of
going on this streak too, though. I
yeah.
mean, it's been what, 3 or 4 years now that it's been this
Well,
bad.
I'm talking consecutive losses. I mean, I think at that time, Tampa. I think the NFL had 14-game seasons, and I
Well,
think Tampa had lost
Carolina though
15.
technically hasn't even been relevant since that Super Bowl loss, right? I mean, they just really
Not really.
declined since then.
Yeah. I'll tell you this. I think, and this isn't put on Bryce, folks. If Bryce had stayed in the position, let's say Carolina rode with him and said, "Look, we're not going anywhere, so let's just see if he develops." Even though we're not putting a lot around him, maybe he can find ways to make things happen out of nothing to a degree. If you left him in there, I could see the Carolina Panthers really going 0-16, 17, I should say. You put Dalton out there, are they going to win? They're not going to win more than 2 games, regardless. They're just not. But the organization is awful. So, could they beat the Bucks? I'd take Tampa Bay. I would take Tampa Bay to beat this Carolina team. I really would. I think there was more enthusiasm. I think this team is shot, and the ownership doesn't give a crap, and that's too bad. So, yeah, I would take the Tampa Bay Bucks to beat this team, bud.
Fair enough.
That's pretty sad.
Fair enough.
That's pretty sad.
All right.
Great question. I like that question, bud.
All right. Moving on. Next one is Dolphins at Seahawks. Seahawks are 2-0 to start off the year. They are a 4.5-point favorite here at home.
I don't understand, a lot of what goes on in Miami anymore. I feel bad, obviously, for Tua and what's going on with that situation. We had talked about last week that they had contemplated bringing in Tannehill as a backup, just to have somebody with some familiarity.
And Tua has no plans to retire, he said, too. That's the other thing.
No, I
plans.
know.
He's gonna play.
Yeah, and I know he's taking some time away, obviously, to evaluate exactly where he's at and everything, which I applaud. I wish he would retire. I do.
I agree.
But that being said, you have all these distractions, concerns about this guy as a person. Is he going to be okay? If you put aside all the football stuff and everything with Tyreek and all, see, again, we're getting into these off the field situations now. And Miami had already proven last year that they struggle to beat good football teams, particularly on the road. And this has just become a problem, and it just continues, and it continues. They lost to a really good Buffalo team, but now you're asking them to travel 3,000 miles to play in one of the toughest places you could possibly imagine, is up in Seattle. And what's the spread on this game, bud?
This one is Seahawks 4.5.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. And Gino's playing some pretty good ball, bud. And he is playing some pretty good football. I did not realize this guy is a good fourth quarter quarterback. He is a good fourth quarter quarterback. And I like what I'm seeing out of them. Their defense is playing well. That was a good win up against that they had against the Patriots. And I think that continues. I think that road trip for Miami is going to be difficult. I don't think they're fully focused on what they need to do. I think Seattle may be beginning to find their rhythm on offense. I like that 4.5. I like Seattle to win this game and to cover.
Yeah, this is tough for me because looking at this, obviously, I brought it up earlier when we talked about the Thursday night game. Did I get a little too hyped about New England, right? If I was a little too hyped about them and they're not as great as we maybe thought they were, if you think about this 2-0 team of Seattle, you've beaten Denver and you've beaten New England. I mean, that's not a lot to say for it, right? I mean, we just talked about how bad Denver's been. They don't even have a full playbook for Bo. And they even kind of struggled, right? They could have even almost lost to Denver.
Yeah.
New England, they took them into overtime. So if these two teams are really as bad as we think they are, then this isn't a legit 2-0 team. Now, the Dolphins, like you said, have a lot of issues. Obviously, Skylar Thompson's going to have to be in here now as quarterback. I am assuming there's going to be a lot more running. Achin's probably going to get the ball a lot more. I don't think you're going to see a lot of big plays unless Tyreek and Waddle make those big plays. It's going to be a lot of short game, things like that. So this game's tough. This game is really tough to pick. I hate that 4.5 spread. I'm actually gonna go only because Tua's not playing in this game. I'm gonna actually have to go to Seattle because they're at home. But I'm not taking them to cover. I don't like the cover in
Okay.
this. The defense is good still in Miami. I like the defense. Um, Playing against Seattle, Geno's one of those quarterbacks too. It's kind of like the same thing with me with like Minnesota stuff. I'm waiting for that other foot to drop on him where he's just gonna have that game where he's not gonna look like a great quarterback. He's gonna go out there and he's gonna throw 2 picks in the game, and I think it could be against Miami. Um, so I like Seattle to win, but I don't like the cover of the 4.5 though.
Yeah, I think if it was Tua, and potentially if it was Tua
If Tua's
playing,
playing,
I
I'm
could
going
still.
Miami. That's how this would be.
Well, I'll tell you what, but I was going to say if Tua was playing, I could still possibly lean towards Seattle to win the game,
Yeah,
possibly.
I can't. I
But I
can't.
can
Like
see
I
it
said,
turning
because I'm
into
just not high with Seattle with the two wins. I mean, if
no,
New
and I
England's
get
really
that.
that bad, like we said against the
Yeah,
Jets, and we just got hyped up, and Denver, we talked about how bad Denver is. Denver's just terrible right now. Those are
yeah.
two not great wins then for me, and the fact that you
But
almost
I don't
lost to
know this.
both though. You could have lost both games. You could be
Yeah,
0-2.
exactly. But I don't like Skylar walking into this
I don't either.
atmosphere.
That's why. That's why.
We'll see what happens.
But
I
the
think
defense will
it
have to
potentially
keep them in this
will
game.
turn.
The Miami
Yeah,
defense will have to keep this game. If not, Seattle will cover that spread then.
yeah, it's going to be interesting, but I'm worried about that aspect of it.
Next game we have on here, big game. The Ravens at the Cowboys. Baltimore is a 1-point favorite in Dallas, though.
Yeah, as much as Baltimore has struggled in protecting leads, um, over the last couple of seasons, especially, particularly in big games. Jackson, as we mentioned, I said, Lamar's played well, um, and that surprises me to say that sometimes. I mean, he deserved the MVP last year, but through these first 2 games, he's made a couple mistakes. But it has not just been solely Lamar having the issues. I think the coaching staff is having some issues. Both sides of the ball are having some issues. I don't believe, they're using Henry correctly. I don't understand this. That's just baffling to
Well,
me.
it's like
But here's
Harbaugh said. He's like, we didn't bring him in here to rush him through. Why not? Then
well, I
did you
get
bring him? What
part.
did you bring him in for? I get that. Like you're supposed to have a two-headed, backfield right there with him and Lamar. Give him the ball. Give him the ball. Like
Yeah,
that's the point of bringing him in. You got rid of other people to bring him in. You let some of these guys go just so you could sign him. Like why would you not? And I'm not
yeah,
saying 30, but the guy should be able to touch the ball. He touched the ball 18 times this last week, and he almost rushed. And he had 90 yards. So he
yeah.
could do it. You don't have to give him it 30 times, but anywhere between that 18 to maybe 21 to 22 mark, he's gonna have a great game for you.
Yeah, I know you got the tires, there's 60,000-mile tires, but when you put them on the vehicle, you're down to about 25,000
He
that's
could
left on
still
the
use them.
tires. But you still got some production there, so you might think about using it. So to that point, I'm actually taking Baltimore to win this game, folks. I do believe that Henry's going to play a bigger factor because if you look at Dallas's run defense, this is really now becoming something that's so obvious that every team knows what to do now. It's not so much trying to pass on them.
Mm-hmm.
It's just run the ball because they don't know how to defend the run. They over attack, they leave the gaps, and for whatever reason, regardless of what defensive coordinator you have out there, they just can't find ways to shut down the run.
Yeah.
And I think this is a prime example of or a good example of where if Baltimore does it correctly between Lamar and Henry, then you should be able to get decent production out of this and decent yards. You don't
Here,
want Lamar out there running for 50, 70 yards, I don't
if
think.
if
But
I'm Baltimore in this game, I'm running the old Florida option plays that Tebow used to run and just run the ball like crazy with these two. Right? I agree with you. This rushing offense, our defense is terrible, but on the other hand, that secondary for the Ravens is not great right now. They are
it's not great.
not playing great ball. So it's going to come down to ball control, I believe, because if Baltimore is running the ball like crazy, they're going to keep the ball in their hands a lot more. Where I feel like if Cowboys are going to score, they're going to score quickly, because they're going to just throw the ball on that secondary and they're going to score it with Lamb and Prescott's going to get a lot in. But if the Ravens are running the ball like crazy, they're going to have a lot of ball control. The time control. The time's going to be on their hand. I do think I have Baltimore winning this game. They should cover. It's a 1-point favorite. I mean, they probably win by 3. It's probably last second field goal, something like that. It's going to be a good game. But I like the Ravens more because for me, I've always been the type where if I like to run. I like to have a running game more than passing. I don't even care that this is a passing league. If you can't run the ball, you can't win games because you could throw. You get to the end of the game in 2-minute drill. I'd rather try to run the ball, run the clock out, than try to throw it. You can drop a pass, and the incompletions don't run the clock, right? Every single run play at least runs the clock a little bit. So.
Yeah, and I don't, and the last thing I'll say about this, again, Dallas's run issues on the defensive side parlays with what they're dealing with on the offensive side because they don't have a running game. They have nothing.
Yeah.
And you can't
27 yards of rushing last week. That was it. Yeah, I believe, and let me verify that before I say that, folks. 27 rushing yards altogether for... Was it? No. Sorry. That was not it. I want to have it right here before. Oh, no. Dowdle had 30 rushing yards. Ezekiel Elliott had 16 rushing yards between the two. So basically 46 rushing yards between the two. And that's not even add. I think Prescott had a few and somebody else. But between those two, basically, you're only getting 46 yards.
Yeah, and if you've got defenses that figure out ways to double up on CD and just take your chances on the other side of the ball, and they don't have a running game. Dallas is becoming extremely limited.
Well, and they only gave They only gave it to him 13 times, 2 though each. Yeah. 7 for Dowdle, 6 for Elliott.
Yeah, see, and again, I get it. You're down so many to New Orleans. You can't do anything with the running game because now it's about trying to play catch up. I get it, but. Again, that's just there's two sides of your team here that have glaring problems, and ironically, one can't stop the run, and the other side just can't run.
Exactly.
And so this is a double negative, and this is a disaster. And this is why people now are talking about Dallas not even making the playoffs. And folks, if this continues, you got to look at that and think, man, maybe they don't make the playoffs. And if they do, they make it with a 10-7 record or 9-8 record. Not going anywhere. So you guys, you Dallas fans, wow, I guess protect your TVs because Dallas fans apparently love to tear up the TVs when the season blows up in their face. So you might be losing some TVs here pretty soon.
So is this a bigger game for the Cowboys to win, or is this a bigger game for the Ravens?
Bigger game for the Cowboys.
So
I just think.
So you think if the Ravens still go 0-3, do they have a chance to still make the playoffs?
Yes.
Okay.
I do. I do think that.
I totally agree with you on both those aspects. I do agree too. I think it is a bigger game for the Cowboys, and I do believe that the Ravens lose this game. It's not as bad as if the Cowboys lose.
Yeah, and then real quick, and the reason I say that is because not just how Dallas is playing on the field, but this again shows where Jerry Jones did nothing in the offseason, nothing to improve this football team because, hey, we don't need anything. Well, I guess you were right, Jerry. So good luck with that.
For sure. All right, moving on. We got the 49ers coming off a bad loss to the Minnesota Vikings, and you got at the Rams, who are coming off a terrible loss to the Cardinals, getting killed. San Francisco is a 6.5-point favorite in this one. I got the Niners winning this. I mean, Kyle Shanahan's got Sean McVay's number. We talked about the injuries, just how depleted they are everywhere. I don't think this game's going to be close, although I did say that last week against Minnesota, but obviously Minnesota's a little bit better team than the Rams for sure, but Rams are in trouble. They are in big trouble right now. They got to get healthy. But yeah, I just don't see this game being close at all.
No, and we've talked about that. We talk about this, folks, all the time. Anthony and I talk about this. We preach this every time we get on a podcast and we're talking about teams being successful. You can have all the talent in the world, but if you have injuries, it doesn't matter what you have. If you've got injuries, you're not going anywhere. It's just not going to work. And this is the Rams are the blueprint for injuries and what happens when you have them to this magnitude. I mean, they are devastated. They are decimated with injuries. The flip side of that is the 49ers coming off a tough loss up in Minnesota. This is the best cure-all you could have. I mean, you still got Christian on the injured list, and he's trying to get better. So what better team to face right now than a team like the Rams, where
Yep.
you can try to get your guys back on point, let Purdy, get that feel back and get back on the winning note. And that's what's going to happen here. The 49ers are going to win this game. They're going to cover. And wow, Ram fans, that Super Bowl win seems like 100 years ago right about now, doesn't it?
Definitely, for sure. Poor Rams, definitely.
It's crazy.
All right.
That's crazy.
Sunday night game this week. We got the Chiefs at the Falcons. Chiefs are a 3 favorite right now against the Falcons. I don't know, Mike. This game is kind of interesting to me. With the way
Pacheco,
with Pacheco out, the way Mahomes looked last week. Now, granted, I get it. This could just be a Bengals thing, right? It just could be the Bengals just having their number. They just know how to play them. If Chiefs could go out here and win this game by 14, right, 17 if they wanted to. I think. I liked what the Falcons. Like I said, I liked how the Falcons looked. But then again, they were going up against a rough secondary in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Chiefs are going to bring a lot of pressure. They know that Cousins doesn't handle the pressure very well. Chris Jones is probably going to be in the backfield a lot. They're going to have to, double team Chris a lot. Make plays. I think they got to try to run the ball. Get Bijan going early. But I still I don't think the Falcons have enough to beat them. I like the Chiefs here. I do like them to cover on this one too. I see them probably winning by 10 in this game.
Yeah, we talked about this earlier, and as long as you got 1-5 back there, I'm hard pressed to pick against him. I don't care where it's at. You could be playing this game on the moon, and I'm going to be hard pressed to pick against Patrick. So you got to beat the man to be the man. So that's where I'll hold it at.
That's true.
And I don't think that's great, Kurt. You finally balled out on a nationally televised game. You showed us what you think you are. I just don't know if you're that guy consistently enough. It's going to be a tough game. I know it's at home, but again, you gotta show me the scoreboard at the end of the game before I'll pick against Patrick.
Yeah,
I just don't. I think the Kansas City wins and they cover.
For sure.
I just do. It's just two.
Well, 2 Monday night games this week, Mike. First game, we talked a little bit about the Jags starting off 0-2 against the Bills this week. We're 2-0. Buffalo is a 5-point favorite. That's another one of those games where I think Buffalo probably could even be a higher favorite. I don't like what the Jags are doing. I don't know what's going on there. They do not look good. Trevor just does not look like the man that we watched, in college. Even that first year that he was in, I don't know what happened to this team. But I don't like what I'm seeing. They're heading down a very, very bad path right now, where I thought they would actually be able to compete. I thought they would actually be fighting Houston for the division, but it looks like right now they're going to be looking to try to make a lot, a early pick in the draft this year. And I love the Bills. We've talked about the Bills before. I love what they're doing so far this year. I love the the decision making from Allen this year so far. The run game's there for him. Defense is playing great. I like the Bills to win this game. I love them to cover, for sure.
Yeah, I like what we're seeing out of Buffalo too. But I mean, again, obviously they went down to Miami one and showcased, how good. I mean, granted, they've got Miami's number. We know that. But you still got to go and you got to ball out. You got to win again. That was a beatdown. That was a beat down by Buffalo. And like I talked about, when we started the season with this, folks, I told, Bud knew I had Josh as my preseason MVP, and right now he's doing nothing to push that thought out the door. Like Bud said, I don't know what the F is going on in Jacksonville. It's what's almost laughable to me, but I don't mean this as it sounds in a bad way, but it kind of is. Do you know, maybe you know this, but I guess Trevor's entered into a partnership because they're renaming the stadium. And I don't know what's going to be, but he's actually, ironically, he's in partnership with the group that's buying the naming rights. Because of that, his initials, I think, are going to be part of the stadium name.
Are you serious? I didn't hear that.
Yes, his initials are going to be part of the stadium. So, folks, for you Jacksonville fans and just curiosity fans, in particular, you're playing this bad, and yet your name, your initials are going to be on this stadium, basically like it's your house.
Yeah.
And you can't sweep your house, you can't clean your house. All you do is letting the dust pile up, and you're making no effort to make any improvements.
Yeah.
And the whole thing is a disaster. And it's like we talked about. We expected Jacksonville to come out and at least build back to something other than what they showed last year. And nothing has changed.
Yeah.
Nothing has changed. Except they're just going to go back over to England this year and embarrass themselves two more times like they did last year, like they do every year. And that's too bad because I like Jacksonville and I like Trevor. But you got big problems. And at the end of the season, when you're not in the playoffs, you're going to probably have to make some wholesale changes. And unfortunately, you can't do it with Trevor because his name's on the stadium. So you're stuck with that, and you're going to have to go forward. But I've got the Bills winning this. I don't think it's going to be close. Buffalo's the real deal, folks. They really are the real deal. Getting rid of Diggs is one of the best things you could have done for Josh. It opened up everything for this guy now, and he's showing it. I don't want to see him continue to do this at the pace he's doing it. I don't want him to get hurt.
Yeah. No, for sure.
Buffalo wins and covers.
For sure. Definitely. And last game on the list to finish off the Monday night is the Commanders at the Bengals. Commanders coming off a win against the Giants. Obviously, we talked about the Bengals at length, losing to the Chiefs here. Cincinnati is a 7-point favorite at home against them. This is tough. The Bengals obviously looking terrible against New England, but looking like Super Bowl contenders against the Chiefs. Jaden Daniels has played pretty well this year. He's my guy. I'm hoping maybe he can make a push for Rookie of the Year this year. I would have liked to see a little more against the Giants team. I would like to see him, get in the end zone more, obviously. I mean, a lot of field goals in that game. If the Bengals have found their stride, though, if Kansas City was the team that they needed to get there and find a way to, get back up there, it might be a long day for Washington, I think, and they can definitely cover. But if they're still not that team, I think Washington can give Cincinnati a scare. I really think they do. I mean, Cincinnati's 0-2 for a reason, right? I mean, the same thing with like the Ravens. They're 0-2 for a reason. They both have lost to bad teams this year. The Commanders, I don't think, are that bad. I think once they figured out that, I think Eckler has found a home in Washington real well. I think Jaden is going to be that guy for them. They got decent wide receivers, so I like what they're doing. The defense is not terrible, but I am going to go Cincinnati in this game because it is a huge game for Cincinnati. They need to try to find it. Just like I said for the Ravens, I think even though they're playing the Cowboys big, but going 0-3, they don't want to go 0-3. The Bengals definitely do not want to go 0-3 if they want to make a push at all in this. So I think this is a really big game for the Bengals, especially on the sense that the Cowboys could easily beat the Ravens. They want to stay ahead of the Ravens, obviously, in the division too. So for them to go 1-2 would be huge if the Ravens could go 0-3. So I am taking the Bengals, but to cover, I'm gonna go no. I don't think they cover.
Yeah. Well, real quick, Jaden can't be the Rookie of the Year because, as all the NFL pundits declared before the season started, Bo was the predetermined Rookie of the Year, so we know that's going to Bo next. Because we've seen, where how well that's working out. So, Jaden, I know you tried, but just keep trying.
Keep trying.
For the game itself, but and this is where I kind of wonder if, they're not playing the Giants this week, so you're not going to score in every possession. We know that. I do wonder, like you mentioned, has Cincinnati begun to get that feel now? They got those early struggles. They're showing some progression. Will this be the game where they throw some things at Jaden? Because, again, this kid is running so much, and this is the one thing I didn't want to see. And we know young quarterbacks have got the mobility. It's natural. You rely on your legs.
A lot of these quarterbacks run nowadays. I think I brought it up last week. It's a different era where it's just a thing now. This option stuff is starting to come in more into the NFL, just like it was in college. It's starting to come in the NFL a lot more. These guys are taking off.
Yeah. If the game were in Cincinnati or the game was in Washington, I could see possibly. I actually am going to go with the spread. I think Jaden's going to see a couple of things he's not familiar with, and I do believe Cincinnati is beginning to find their stride. I don't think it'll be a blowout. I could see like a 21-10, 21-13 type game, something like that, 24-13, but not a blowout. I just think, Joe's going to start to show that what we're used to seeing. Hopefully the injuries are behind him, and he's talking confident, that they're going to have a great year. And I think they're going to build on that. I hope the receivers, like we mentioned at the start, just settle down. Let's just focus on what you're there for, and that's to win football games, and everything else will take care of itself. And I think this is one of those like cure-all games, like we talked about with the Niners and the Rams. I think the Cincinnati continues to build off of this with the Commanders.
So
we'll
same question for the Ravens that you get for the Bengals. Bengals go 0-3. Are you still worried about
Cincinnati needs?
Are they? Do you still think they make the playoffs if they're 0-3?
Man, I'll tell you what, bud. I'm still gonna say a very non-committed yes, but it would be borderline. If you actually said yes
do you
or
think
no,
the Ravens are a better team than Cincinnati? Because you're all in that Baltimore for sure makes the playoffs, but you're kind of on the fence for Cincinnati. So do you think Baltimore is a better team than Cincinnati right now?
I actually don't. I know where you're going with this, and I get it, but I don't think Cincinnati's a better, or Baltimore's a better football team. I still think Joe's actually a better quarterback. I really do when he's healthy. I would go if you said yes or no. Yes, I do still feel Cincinnati.
I agree with you there because I would take. Well, yeah, I would take Burrow and Chase over Jackson and Flowers all day for sure. I like them two more. But I for some weird reason for me it's other than when they went to the Super Bowl, I've never been like huge on the Cincinnati defenses, right? Cincinnati's never just had an outstanding blow-away defense, right? And offensive line too, for sure. Obviously, since Burrow's been there, he's never had a tremendous offensive line. But the defense too is one of those. They've never been wowed. Other than the Super Bowl, like I said, when they made it, they had a good defense. They had a really good defense. But they let Bates go. I know Hendrickson's still there, but I just don't get this feel like their defense is that great. Baltimore does have a good defense. They have great players too. Obviously, losing Queen didn't help, but they still have talented players on the defense. I don't know just why they're just not great this year. So for me, I do think Baltimore's the little bit better team. I would take them a little bit higher than Cincinnati only because I like the defense a little bit. And then the offense, I think the offenses are both really good. But if I had to pick, I would take Burrow and Chase over Flowers and Jackson. But they also have Henry, too. And Henry's more proven than Moss has been. So I still like the offense a little more. I like the defense better in Baltimore. So that's why I would say Baltimore's a better team, which is why I'm not as worried about the Ravens going 0-3. But if the Bengals go 0-3, I think it's done. I think season's over at that point.
It will be hard, and if they do get in, I think like I said, if you like yes or no, just give it. I say yes, but if they do, I have concerns because like we talked about with their running back situation. I thought that was a huge mistake. Letting
Mixon
that
go.
play out.
Well, yeah, Mixon isn't running great for Houston. But here's the other thing that I'm going to bring too is if I'm right about the Steelers and that defense, they go 0-3 and the Steelers are really that good and the defense is that strong to lead them that way, they're not going to beat the Bengals are not going to beat them then. And if they can't get past the Ravens, and the Ravens can't even get past the Steelers because the Steelers are that much better than those two, and it shows, then it has to be Bengals season's over. They're not going to get. There's no way they're going to get three teams in that division to go to the playoffs, especially if the Jets are finding their way too. We already know Buffalo looks good. Kansas City's going to be there. Like Miami also be there. The Chargers are 2-0. There's other teams there. So the Bengals and the Ravens, you guys are shooting yourselves in the foot right now, being 0-2. You guys needed to win one of those games. You guys should not have lost to the Raiders, and you guys should not have lost to the Patriots. You guys should both be 1-1 right now.
Yeah, and that's definitely true. I think, if we look at Pittsburgh real quick, and again, I'm still their offense is just not great. If even if Cincinnati were to go 0-3, and we both don't think they will, obviously, but even if they were to, they still have 2 games with Pittsburgh coming up. If you stay close, you get those 2 wins. Obviously you make up a little bit of that difference right there. So those things can still play themselves out, but a lot would have to happen with that. But bottom line is to go 0-3. We know the percentages work greatly against you even making the play. That's just the way it plays out. But to have that situation running back play out like it did, and you got him down there in Houston now and Mixon, and he's motivated to prove this, the Bengals wrong, and he's with a really good football team now too. That can definitely come back to bite you in the backside.
Yeah.
But this is still, in my opinion, Cincinnati really has to win this game.
I agree.
They really do. I just think it kind of contradicts what I'm saying. I get that, but yes, they can overcome a 0-3 deficit, but really, realistically, you want to avoid that at all possible. Don't put yourself in that position.
I agree.
So this is a bigger one. Washington isn't playing for anything. They're just playing to get better. So they're playing with all the cards.
That's a tough statement to make.
They're getting better.
But that's a tough statement. They're not playing for anything, Mike. I mean,
yeah, that's what I'm saying. They're not playing for anything.
How? How are they not playing for anything?
No, Washington's not playing for anything.
How are they not?
What do you mean?
Because they win. If Washington wins, right? They win. The Ravens find a way to win. Cowboys are now 1-2. We're not high. The Eagles are playing the Saints. We think the Saints are going to win this game. The Eagles are now 1-2. You got the Giants playing the Browns, who we have losing also. They're going to be 0-3. You have a chance to be in the division 2-1 if you go ahead and beat the Bengals. They got a lot to play for. This is big for them too, because, man, who would have thought Washington could be, after week 3, 2-1, while the Eagles and the Cowboys are both 1-2, and Giants probably will be 0-3. Everybody expects, but for them to be leading the division, that's going to give them a lot of confidence to be ahead of those two. I think that hurts the Cowboys and the Eagles to be like, dang, we're 1-2. Like that takes a lot of confidence away from them, especially the Cowboys, considering they're always supposed to be a top tier regular season team, but now they're not a top tier regular season team, right? So this is a big win for the Commanders if they can kind of pull this off, because I think it puts them in, great to line them up. And I don't know what the rest of their schedule is. And I want to take a look and see what their schedule is after this, to see, because if they have a pretty decent schedule, who's to say? So who do they play next week? They play the Cardinals.
Is that a home game or is that a road game?
It's in Arizona.
Yeah.
So let's see what the next few games are just after that. So they got the Cardinals, the Browns, Ravens, and Panthers. Those are the next four. Yeah. Those are the next 4 games. I mean, they could easily win 3 of those 4, losing to maybe Baltimore.
Yeah.
But at the same thing, if Baltimore's not that great of a team either, just like the Bengals, who's to say they can't win the rest of those? So that's what I'm saying. I think for the Commanders, if they can find a way to stay close, to say that they can stick with a team like Cincinnati or something like that, it might make them push, to be a better team, because if these Eagles are starting to fall, the Cowboys are starting to fall, we know the Giants aren't a great team, it leaves the door wide open for Washington to take that chance to be that last seed, or, obviously even win the division. And you win the division, you get a home game in the playoffs. That could help.
Yeah, no, and I get what you're saying, but my point is that they didn't have expectations coming in. You're starting a rookie quarterback who has talent, but it's undeveloped yet, and we're seeing right now that he's running a lot, and that's not unexpected. You trust your legs when you trust your decision making, so that's going to be expected. But we look at the Giant game. Look how many field goals they kicked in that game. As bad as the Giants were, they could only kick field goals to win it. So that speaks to where their struggles are offensively, and that's still going to be an issue. When they haven't even played the divisional games yet, you hope that Washington, I'm saying, you go out there. If you can get some wins, build on it, and maybe by week 8 or 9, you're playing better than you thought. Heck, man, maybe we can go to the playoffs. Right now, I don't see it. But anything is an improvement. And 1-1 right now for Washington is an improvement. You just continue to build on that, and everything's a plus.
I'm making a change. I'm going to make a change, actually. I've always been the type to just try to go, with the normal game. It's just like, this is what it should be. I think so. No, I'm changing my pick. I'm going upset. I'm taking Washington to win this game. I'm gonna switch it. I'm gonna take
Really?
Washington. I'm going upset special.
I like
Like
it.
I said earlier, I'm riding with Houston. I love him. I was riding with Jaden at the beginning of the. I said he's the better quarterback so far. He's actually outplayed Caleb. In my opinion, he's played Caleb.
Yes.
I don't care what anybody says. Go look at the numbers. He's outplayed Caleb. He's this
Yeah.
year. I said he was gonna be the better quarterback. I'm gonna run with him. I think they're gonna go ahead into this. They're gonna go into Cincinnati and win this game. I'm gonna go with it. That's gonna be my upset pick this week. I'm changing.
And I agree with you too that of all the quarterbacks drafted, he's shown the most. He really has.
Yeah.
I mean, the numbers are there. They don't lie. The struggles the Patriots are having right now. They just put him in this last week just to get him out there. We know what's going on, obviously, down in Denver. So that speaks volumes. So right now, Jaden and obviously Caleb's having some
And
problems.
plus,
So
it
Jalen
is big, like I said, because they're gonna already know the outcomes of these games before. So
Yeah.
they're going to know whether the Cowboys won, whether the Eagles won, and the Giants won. If they all three lose, that gives you a bigger, already going at the end of Sunday, it's like, okay, guys, Monday, we got to put it on them. It's time.
And I like Washington. Of all, it's interesting. Somebody asked me, "Do you like any NFC teams?" Maybe you and I had this discussion. The only team I grew up a Dallas fan in part, folks, until they kept beating my Rams. So that was when they killed that. But since then, the only NFC East team I could root for at all, or at least not mind them winning, was Washington. I can't stand the Giants. I don't like Dallas. And Philadelphia, I have no toleration for. Washington, if they win, I like it. I wish they changed the name to something other than Commanders, but that's for another day. But I do like the colors of the team, and I do like Jaden a lot. And I hope this kid balls out because right now, for me, I think he's right now. I think he's the early favorite for a rookie of the year. I know people are going to say Caleb's coming on. Well, I'm not seeing it, so not yet. But with Jaden, I think you're seeing some flashes.
I agree, and I agree with you on the East too. If I had to pick a team that I liked, it'd probably be Washington myself. But there's always like a person that plays for Washington that I just like. Like for me, like I don't care for Dallas. I don't care for Philadelphia, I'm not a New York fan of any teams, but I do like Dak. I'm a huge fan of Prescott, for sure. But I forget Saquon's in Philadelphia. He's played for both, but I'm a huge Saquon fan too. But Washington's always had somebody like when they had Steven Davis there for a little bit. I used to be a huge fan of Steven Davis when he left there to go there for Carolina. Obviously Eckler's there now. I like Eckler. I'm a huge fan of Jaden. I'm going to push for Jaden this year a lot. Like I said, I'm definitely going to keep an eye on that game. I'll be watching that Monday night because that's my upset pick, and I'm going to stick to it. So for sure, but this is great for sure.
Okay, real quick, bud. So
for sure,
okay,
I like
real
it.
quick.
I like doing the upset pick for sure because I feel like they can do it. I don't know why, but I got this feeling.
Okay, let me ask you this real quick. So let's say they pull off the upset. They're 2-1. Okay, are you ready to say? And let's say they look good doing it. Would you be willing to say they're 2-1? They beat Cincinnati on the road. And let's say they score some touchdowns. It's not just field goals. They look good.
You have to.
They look decent.
Well, I feel like if you have to beat a team like Bengals, you have to score touchdowns for sure.
Yeah. Are you ready? Would you be ready to say Washington is going to the playoff? Not win the division. I'm saying I'm not committing you to that. Would you say Washington will be a playoff team?
Just off of just them winning, and I don't know
if they look good.
Well, so
not great, good.
But what about the other two outcomes? Like the Cowboys and the Eagles outcomes.
Put that aside, because you have to remind yourself.
Just going off of the game, just off that one game.
Yeah,
okay.
But
here's the thing for me. Yes, I would say yes, they are a playoff team because to be able to beat a Bengals team, you have to go in, like you said, they're going to score. You're not going to beat the Bengals by just kicking field goals. It's not going to happen. Joe's not going to allow it to happen. Chase is too good. They're going to score eventually on you. So to go in there, you have to play a great game. To beat Cincinnati, that's what I'm saying. You have to play a great game. I'm not sitting here saying that Cincinnati's a terrible team and that it's going to be a walkthrough for Washington and that they're a better team because they're 1-1, they're 0-2. No, you have to play a great game if you want to beat Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals. So yes, if they're good enough to beat the Bengals and win the game like that, score some touchdowns, like they know how to work the ball. Jaden throws and runs a little bit. Eckler, get him involved, stuff like that. Then yes, I believe they are going to be a playoff team. And that's what I'm saying. Even because when I thought about it, even when I asked you about whether the outcomes, I don't think it even matters on the other outcomes. Even if they both win, the Cowboys and the Eagles, they're all both still 2-1. But to beat the Bengals, I think that's a stronger win. Well, maybe not. Actually, if all three of those teams wins, those are actually all three quality wins. To beat the Saints, to beat the Ravens, and to beat the Bengals. So that might say a lot about all three of those teams, but I honestly think the Eagles are in for it. I don't think they win. The Cowboys and Ravens, that's such a huge toss-up on that one, but I do have the Ravens winning that one. So I do have the Cowboys and Eagles both losing, with the Commanders winning. So I do think that they'll be 2-1 when it's all said and done and lead the division after week 3.
And that would be crazy with a rookie quarterback. I mean, that'd be phenomenal.
Definitely.
You know, and with their divisional games coming up, so they wouldn't have even played Dallas or Philadelphia yet. The Giants are obviously not in the conversation, but
Yeah.
I just think that would be interesting. And I agree with you. If they could go in there and they could look good against Cincinnati, pull out an upset win, you know, I wouldn't be ready to commit to a division title, but I could see them somehow finding a way to slip in as a playoff team with an 8-9, maybe 9 record type thing. You know, but I'm rooting for Washington. I'm rooting for Jaden. I don't. They do. If they win a division, wouldn't break my heart.
For sure.
You know,
For sure.
I'm done with the Philadelphia Dallas thing. Let's get somebody else in there.
I agree. Well, folks, got our picks in. We're ready to go. Please let us know in the chat what you guys think. Hopefully we have a little bit better week this week on our picks than we did last week. But in the end, guys, it's all fun. Like I said, we're just glad football's back. It's rocking. It's rolling again. You know, we got some good teams. We got some old teams that are still playing well. We got some new teams that we're talking about. We got some good rookies we're talking about so far this year. It's been a pretty good season so far, I would say. So keep us informed with like you said, your guys' picks, what you guys think about ours. Give us some upsets too. You know, mine, like I said, if you weren't here, my upset this week is the Commanders beating the Bengals this week. So keep us going. Hopefully you guys have a good week this week and enjoy some games. Mike, anything you want to add?
Just as Anthony said, folks, and as always, I mean, we greatly appreciate participation, comments, you know, concerns, all type of things. But and like he said, you know, if you've got an upset pick or just a favorite team and your thoughts on that particular game, then we always love to hear those too. And I mean, we're always open to insight. You know, like you said, we're mediocre. We're not, you know, we're not always insightful. You know, again, Vegas isn't reaching out to us for our picks. Trust us, they're avoiding our picks. But last thing I like to say, as I always do. Everything you see, everything you hear. This gentleman next to me, he's the person who makes this happen. He is the driving force behind this show. It's his genius, it's his creativity that keeps us going and gives us the look and the sounds that we have. So that is greatly appreciated. And I tip my hat to Mr. Anthony Alvarez each and every week. And for you folks to tuning in and just kind of hang out with us for a little bit. So until then, I'll turn it back over to my associate, and we will sign off here in just a minute.
Yeah, thanks a lot, guys, for sure tuning in. Another great week. Hopefully everybody enjoys the rest of the weekend. Have a good night. Enjoy some football tomorrow. Like I said, 2 games on Monday, so hopefully you guys get off of work a little early. I think that first game starts around, 5 or something like that, Mountain Standard Time. So some of you people might want to get off a little early. But then again, it is the Jags and Bills, so don't get too crazy if you can't get off. So that game. So hopefully, but
you might just miss Josh's first touchdown throw. That's all you're probably going to miss. I mean, you know, they might be down 14.
He might miss his first 3 touchdown passes, honestly. Yeah. But anyways, folks, thanks again for tuning in. We appreciate you guys. Don't forget to hit the like, hit that subscribe button. Like I said, it helps us a lot more than you guys think. But like I said, once again, enjoy your night. Have a great week. And stay safe out there, people.
Good night, folks.